Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Coaches Unscripted Podcast. I'm your host, Trey Belcher, and with me, as always, is owner of Go Performance, Clarksburg, Maryland, and Gemini Fitness Solutions, Corey Smallwood. How's it going, Corey?
What's up, Trey? How are you doing?
Everything's good, man. So
Yeah.
last week, guys, we got to learn a lot about me and not as much about Corey. So I think it's only right this week, as we continue to build on these stories and the successes and the trials that we go through, to know Corey's backstory so that we can bring us all together and take us on to the future where we're going. So, Corey, last week you put a post on Instagram about something very important that happened in your life, and you and I have had this conversation a little bit, but take us through what happened and how it changed the direction of your life and brought you to where you are now.
Yeah, so it was January 18th. If you follow me and you want to go back and read the post, that's when I posted it. It was the 30th anniversary of a car accident that I was in. And I was a senior in high school, heading back to the gym. I drove home, I don't know, probably wasn't doing homework. I don't know what I was doing. Put on some gym clothes, was heading back to the high school to go work out, and hit some black ice, spun off the road, and grew up in a very, small country town, and there was like two main roads, and I had to get from the one main road to the other main road, and they eventually kind of converge, and I wanted to take a shortcut. So I went through this old, this windy country road. Nobody drives it. I think there might be two houses on the entire road. So I'm cutting through this road, ended up spinning out and hitting a tree, and wrapped my car completely around it. I will wake up sometimes in the middle of the night from the sound of all of the windows in the car just exploding. I was in a t-shirt and shorts because I was going to go work out. And I remember at one point in the hospital just being very uncomfortable, like just itching. And I was in glass. Glass had gone into my shorts, and I was in traction, so they actually had to cut the clothes off of me. So they said there was just tons and tons of glass from this window that apparently had been sitting in. But I remember looking down, knowing that my leg was broken. The tree is literally right next to me, went right through the passenger side of the car. Broke my femur in two places, had a steel rod put in. It was very, as you can imagine, as a senior in high school, I had to miss a lot of school. It wasn't until March that I was actually cleared to go back to school. I had to learn how to walk again. I was, I was an elite level athlete at that time, playing soccer. And I remember going through some physical therapy and having the physical therapy. They put this really big strap around you as you're walking in case you fall, which I did all the time. And they would catch you. And there's a guy and a girl as a physical therapist. And the dude, from what I remember, was jacked. I mean, he was just this enormous, jacked physical therapist. And every time I would lose my strength and I would fall, I'd be dangling there. I ended up losing about 20 pounds during that whole ordeal. I was in traction in the hospital. I had to learn to walk again, like you said, all that stuff. But my goal, graduating, I wanted to go to University of North Carolina in Wilmington, play soccer for them, Division I soccer, study marine biology, and that all changed. I mean, that was it was very emotional for me. I lost my identity. Was no longer a soccer player. I had a steel rod put in my leg. No orthopedist would clear me to play soccer. They said one of two things will happen. You'll get hit hard enough in the leg and it will bend the rod, or you'll get hit hard enough where it will break the bone and the rod, in which case we'll have to do a massive surgery. Yep. So I elected for none of those. Needless to say, didn't get to go play soccer my freshman year. I didn't even get to go to UNCW. Redshirted. The cost of out-of-state tuition there was astronomical. And the dean of admissions for a small, Division III college in Maryland, knew about me playing soccer, and his sons were really into soccer as well. I think we played against each other in tournaments and stuff, and he got me in. I did not have the grades. I did not have the academics to the SAT scores, the ACT scores. I just didn't have it to get into this college, but it was my only other option. And he reached out and said, "Do you want to come to St. Mary's?" And I loved the campus, but in my mind, I'm still a Division I soccer player, but my body said otherwise. And so I ended up going to St. Mary's, still majored in animal sciences, but at that point fell in love with coaching, got into, training and got certified as a trainer the summer after my freshman year, and ended up training some of the basketball players and some of my professors and things like that at the college gym, which was as small as could be. It had like this old universal. I mean, there were no cleaning products. I had to go to whoever ran it. Was just like, can we at least get some cleaning products in here? And that kind of got me what I fell in love with, was coaching and working with athletes and adults and things like that. And so I ended up graduating. I have a degree in biology, and I also have a degree in studio art. I really didn't want to graduate, so I stayed an extra year and got another degree. And then at the end of that, I said I could either be a starving artist or a starving biologist, and neither one of those sounded really good to me. So I went to the local gym and just said, "Are you hiring?" And the guy said yes. Now, prior to that, there was my summer after my freshman year of college, I wanted to keep lifting, right? I loved it.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to go back to the high school. I didn't want to be that creepy graduate that's now working out at the high school. So it's like, okay, it's time to go to a big boy gym. And I walked into the gym and I said, "I don't want to pay for this. Are you hiring? I'll fold towels. I'll do whatever." And a great guy, Kevin Sweeney, said yes. And then they were also hosting a certification there. So I got certified back in 1996. And then that's how I started training everybody at school. So then I graduated and I went into another gym and said, "Are you hiring personal trainers?" And they said, "No, but we are hiring an assistant manager." And I was like, "Well, I can do that." I had no idea, none whatsoever. Made a little adjustments to my resume, turned it in, and got hired.
Nice.
And the funny story about this was, and this was a guy I try to learn from everybody that I've been mentored by. Kevin was amazing. Hired me, gave me my first job in fitness. This other guy, Joe Evans, wasn't really a fitness guy, but a brilliant business guy. I learned so much from him. He's the guy that introduced me into all the Robert Kiyosaki stuff, and the guy never graduated high school. I mean, just phenomenal. Anyways, 2 weeks into me being at this gym, I get a call from the manager, and she goes, "Are you in the office?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Close your door." Okay, 2 weeks. I don't know what's going on. I closed the door. She goes, "Do you see the uniforms there?" I said, "Yep." She goes, "Well, that's mine, Dora, Tom's, Robin's uniforms." I still remember all their names. I'll never forget it. It was that traumatic to me.
Yeah.
"We all quit." I went, "Huh?" They went to start a competitive gym. And so I get on the phone and I call Joe. And I said, "Joe, I have good news and I have bad news. Which do you want first?" He goes, "Give me the good news." I said, "I have payroll under control." He said, "What's the bad news?" I said, "Everybody quit. You got to open the gym at 5:30 tomorrow." And we made it. But that's when, again, I lied. I know nothing about managing a gym right now.
Yep.
So Joe said, "Find somebody." And so I started looking at all of these gym consultants. By the way, the internet's barely been out. There's no like Google searching them. So you look at the back of like these trade magazines and I see Michael Scott Scudder, and I see CMS Michael Chait's organization, and I see a guy named Tom Plummer. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to buy this book, Making Money in the Fitness Industry, Making Money in the Fitness Business, which came out in 1999. It's still it's a Bible. I mean, it is right up there on my shelf. And so I went to a workshop, and I was like, well, this is it. This is a plan. This is all I need to know. And got then connected with Apex Fitness and all the ABC building and all the people that you need to run a very successful business. From there, I moved down to Georgia. I ran a giant gym down there and went to a Tom Plummer business school. And it was the only job I've ever been fired from. And so I went there, the manager, I went there to run their gym component. Well, the manager didn't want me leaving and doing all the, learning, I guess, more than them. So I went back and they fired me. But during that same business school, I actually got interviewed by Tom and some of his team to see if I wanted to come work for their organization. And that was one of those, I got good news and I got bad news. Bad news, I got fired. Good news, I also just got hired. Yeah. And so I called them and they moved me out to California. And that's how I got into the consulting world from there. And then, I did consulting for a very long time, worked with hundreds and hundreds of gyms and YMCAs across the United States. And then when I had my own kids, I have twin daughters, and when they were about 3 years old, they asked for airplanes, little toy airplanes, so that they could fly when Daddy was flying. Yeah. And I thought to myself, I never want to miss one of their recitals. I never want to miss a parent-teacher conference, whatever. I thought that. I've never been parent-teacher conference. That sounds as boring as can be. But so then I said, I'm thinking about not traveling. I was traveling 25, 26, 28 weeks a year. I was always on the road. And so I was working, I distinctly remember this. I was working with a client. I helped him open gym number 2 all the way through gym number, I think, 9. The guy's name was Eric, and he was from Louisiana. He had this harsh Louisiana accent. And so I was working with him on the phone, and it was on a Saturday. My girls were at a bounce house birthday party. And so I took the call, and I'm standing outside, and Eric goes, man, pardon my French, but when the F are you going to open your own gym? And I'm standing there on the sidewalk, and I'm looking around. There's no gym in this town. And I went, tomorrow. And I walked I was working with another company at the time called Active Tracks, another guy, Tom Plummer, taught me so much. This other guy, Gary Albert, taught me so much about business. That guy was a business genius. Yep. So I went into Gary's office and I said, hey, man, I'm going to open a gym. And he said, I knew this day was going to come at some point. And it's kind of what I was meant to do, right? So got into Open Go Performance, been running that for the last 12 years. But I always had this coaching consulting bug in me. And so a lot of the people that I worked with back at the NFBA days and through Active Tracks, when I opened my own gym, they were like, so what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Tell me some of the things that are working for you. And so I kind of reopened my consulting business again. And it's nice because I get to pick and choose my clients that I want to work with. Mm-hmm. And now we're evolving just from, the things like implementing sales systems and semi-private personal training and what do we do with group exercise and how much should I charge and marketing strategies and things like that, to now moving more into how do we incorporate AI? What does the future of fitness look like down the road, and how can I maximize these tools within my gym? So I'm really looking forward to not just the gym side of it, but more of the consulting, more of the speaking, lecturing. in a year and a half, my girls will be going into college. I'm gonna have an awful lot of free time where I hope to be visiting a lot of my gym friends out there and working with their staff and their teams and things like that. So yeah, all of that from. Oh, by the way, I had the steel rod removed. What sociopath does that? Yeah, this was inside my femur right there. That thing was got screw holes where it was put into the bone. Yeah, I keep it right here on my bookshelf. It's a constant reminder of, that was a super hard time. Running a gym business is a super hard time at times, and it's perspective that I made it through that. The quote, "You've survived 100% of the hardest days of your life." Like, that kind of sticks with me. Like, man, if I've made it through that 2020 wasn't that bad. The pandemic wasn't. Like, I've survived worse. Now I'm sitting there like, okay, things happen in your business. Like, I survived a pandemic. Things happen in your business. I survived this. Things happen. I pivoted. I changed my identity. I've done all these things. So, I talk to my clients about that too. I'll show them the picture of my accident. They're like, this is happening right now, but what are you going to take from it? What are you going to make of this? It's not what defines you. It's how do you react to the setback? So,
Yeah, I mean, and there's so much in that. And when I read the post and then hearing the story, some of the key words that I think of are resilience. There are gonna be tough times. There are gonna be things that hit you always when you least expect it. But how do you pivot? How do you bounce
right.
back? How do you roll with the punches and continue forward? Because so many times these things that happen to you at the time are the worst thing ever, but they become blessings in disguise. And you can only have that perspective to, on the back end to know what was what. If you go to UNC Wilmington, shout out to the Seahawks, and play soccer, who knows where you are today?
I know I'm not here.
Right. And so these negatives that happen to you, they build your character. They reveal your character. They give you that perspective to allow us now to coach and to be able to share these stories. And I had a girl come in just the other day. And she found me. She put out on Facebook, "Hey, in search of a trainer." And, thankfully I've got people in the community that recommend me. So she comes in, never been in the gym before. And, well, I take that back. She has been in the gym, but she only uses a treadmill because she is afraid of the stuff, all the machines, all the stuff. She's never touched any of it because it scares her. And she's had some health issues and went through, medications, a story that you hear often. She gets put on medication and it causes weight gain, significant weight gain. And over the course of several years, she gains 60 to 80 pounds. And she's miserable. And she's lost. So she finally has enough and says, I can't do this anymore. And she told me, she came in and she told me, she said, I got to a point where I didn't want to be here anymore. And you think about how often you hear stories like that where people just don't want to be here anymore, and how sad that has to be. But because of all the things that you've gone through, because of the stories that I've gone through, we can be here to catch people when they're at their lowest and say, "Hey, I got you." Yeah. And I said, "Well, I'm glad you're here, and you showed up. I'll take care of the rest. Don't worry about it. This is just stuff. I'm going to show you. I'm going to take care of you." And so she, everybody that comes in gets an FMS screen. So we go through the screen. She comes back the next day. I build her a program. First workout was day before yesterday. I sent her a text yesterday just to check on her, just to follow up. Say, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm going to pull it up right quick and tell you what she said, because I think it shows how we can affect we can take all the things that happen to us and we can make positive change in people's lives. And she said, I'm a little sore, but I'm the happiest I've been in years. And and for us, it may be a small thing, but we don't know how we affect so many other people. And we don't know how much positive change we can bring to the world, how much we can be the light onto somebody's path. And, in your story, and you talked about this little windy road that nobody ever came down. But that day when you needed somebody most, Mr. Ambush came through.
Yeah.
And what a name. What a perfect name. and why did he take that path that day? Maybe
he
was
was
one of the two houses.
He's a bus driver, and he never drives that road, but the kid he was supposed to drop off that was past that road wasn't on the bus that day. And so he turned and took this road and then saw my car, off and mangled, and, radioed in for help. Yeah.
Yeah. And
crazy.
Just some chance thing,
Yeah.
just, the one day the kid's not on the bus.
Yep.
And now you two become inextricably linked.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he is the, he is the saving grace.
Yep.
And we don't ever know when that's us. But because of what we do and what we can bring, a lot of times we catch people at their lowest. And you just never know when the things that happen to you, us, any of us, become blessings in disguise. And it may take 20 years before it comes to fruition, but that day will come.
Yeah.
And by taking the things that happen to you and making those things positives, we can share that light and help so many people and save so many people and be a little bit of positivity in people's lives.
Yeah. I was when I was released from the hospital, they had to move my mattress downstairs. I couldn't do stairs. And so Mr. Ambush he'd come visit, check in with me, but he would always record. Here's what's funny. On VHS, he would record pay-per-view UFC fights, but wasn't called the UFC at the time, right? So he would, and we would watch these fights. Well, this was not really televised. You had to do pay-per-view. It wasn't mainstream like it is today. And we'll talk to some other guests, but there's another guest that I met, and I was like, what do you do? He's a strength and conditioning guy and just happens to work with these UFC people. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm fascinated. I know all about UFC, and I went to, I saw Tito Ortiz fight and Atlantic City and all this time. Oh, well, my fighter was that, it was like, but I don't know if I would have, if, Mr. Ambush wasn't bringing those, VHS tapes over, would I have even be interested in knowing what the heck that was talking about when I bump into this, other coach and have an instant connection through that? There's a book that Dr. Rob Bell, a sports psychologist, wrote called The Hinge. And it talks about hinge moments. And he says, a door without a hinge is just a wall.
Yep.
It takes the hinges. And the hinge, by having a hinge, it opens the door and takes you from one space to the next. And that's kind of, that accident was a hinge moment for me. Yep. It took me from one trajectory of life to a completely different one. And we can be those hinge moments for a lot of our clients. If we think of it that way, we're not just a trainer giving exercise. If they're coming and seeking us out, a lot of them are desperate. A lot of them are stepping out of their comfort zone. They've been outside of the gym 3 or 4 times before they had the courage to walk inside. And what we say to them at those moments are critical. We have to really take our job seriously because we don't know what's going on in that other person's life, and we really could be a very positive hinge moment for them. And They might be talking about us the same way I'm talking about Mr. Ambush
100%.
20 years down the road.
Yep.
That was 30 years ago.
Yep. Now, did you know Mr. Ambush before the accident?
I did. He was one of the most beloved bus drivers at our school.
Yep.
Everybody knows Mr. Ambush.
Yeah.
Everybody. If you grew up in, at high school at this year or around that same time, everybody knew him, and nobody will say a negative thing about that man. I say, Mr. Ambush found me, and they're like, of course he did.
Right. Right.
Of course he did.
Right. Who else would it be?
Who else would it be than Clarence Ambush?
Right. Because of his character, because
Yep.
of how he treated people, because of all the things that we've been talking about and that we'll continue to talk about that really matter, the humanity of it. Because of who he is as a person, of course it was going to be him.
Of course it was.
Yep.
We'd go out to eat once a month. Even when I was in college, guess where we went to eat?
You tell me.
Cracker Barrel.
Ah. It always comes full circle.
Always comes full circle. Cracker Barrel. Yep.
Yeah. I can't tell you the number of times I've had clients say to me, mostly female say, I'm so glad you don't charge counseling hours.
Right. Yeah.
But, that's just, it's their place to come and be themselves and to drop all their worries and not have to be on guard. And that's the beauty part about what we do is we catch people and we build them up. And that's one of the things, I've got T-shirts, in my little storeroom that says, Trey Belcher Training, building people up since 2016, because that's really what we do is we build people up physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever we can do. Yep. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. And that's it. That's, I also tell people if there were no speed bumps, if there were no wrecks, hopefully not a car wreck, but if there was no major events, you're not really living. If you put yourself out there, it's going to get squirrely at some point. And it's not about the setback, it's about the comeback. And that's Dr. Rob talks about that a lot as well. But how do you, okay, you gained 40 pounds. Great. Now what? Okay. You're recovering from, knee replacement. Now what? Yeah. How are you, what's the comeback after that? Okay. You got divorced. Now what? Okay. You had, a third kid. Now what? How are we bouncing back from whatever life threw at us?
Yeah. You always learn more from the losses and the tough times than you do from the wins and the easy times.
Yep.
So, well, that's a heck of a story, Corey. And, I think it's a testament to your resilience and to your character and Mr. Ambush's character and the beauty of how these hinge moments can intersect and how so many positives can come from a seemingly negative thing.
Oh yeah.
And
sometimes you can't, believe me, at 17, I could not see any positive. Zero. It took me a long time to wrap my head around some of this. So sometimes, it takes time, but if you work at it and you look for the positives, it might not just come and punch you in the nose and be like, hey, I'm here.
Yep.
Right. If you find what the positive could be from that and you embrace that or take that on, that next challenge or that next endeavor, I think a lot of people stay in that sadness or depression or loss or whatever it is. And it can be that a negative spiral and obviously doing what we do, we try to always encourage, what is that positive outlook that we could take? What is the silver lining that we can take? Because there's always a silver lining.
Of course. And it is easy to get caught in those negative feedback loops. And and hopefully we can be the agitator to get people out, or to help people get out, or be the hinge. And you don't know, it may take 20 years before you get that perspective. But if you're always looking for it, you know, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And those things, you know, if you're looking, it'll make you aware, and you will have so much more appreciation for it once it hits you right in the face.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's you know, again, it's a heck of a story, and I'm glad you shared it, and I appreciate it, and you know, and I hope everybody out there is appreciating it, and you know, so we'll wrap this thing up for episode 2, part 2 of the Coaches Unscripted Podcast, or as one of my members tried to search the other day, the Coaches Unhinged Podcast. So
it may get that if we ever do a late night one with some bourbon. It might become unhinged.
So stay tuned for the unhinged version of the Coaches Unscripted Podcast.
Some of our guests could get a little unhinged.
So again, ladies and gentlemen, episode 2, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon Music. And we thank you for all the feedback that's come in so far. And we'll be back next week with episode 3. I promise you we'll be here. And this time we may bring a guest. So,
all right.
So to wrap it all up, like, comment, subscribe. Any feedback is positive. We appreciate that. For Corey Smallwood, I'm Trey Belcher. This has been the Coaches Unscripted Podcast. Take care, guys. We'll see you soon.